Hello, and welcome to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. We are on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is the Communications and PR Manager for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, ongoing series that he and I have cooked up for you. How about that lesson? And where do you think use that?
I see what you did.
We are calling it Hunger in the Valley. We've been talking about all the different ways that food banks and food pantries impact our communities and our residents. So, Les, thank you for taking some time this morning to jump on a Zoom and continue our conversation.
Janet, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Before we jump in the weeds on some of what we're going to talk about today, in case someone hasn't heard any of our previous conversations, or they have maybe this preconceived notion of what Blue Ridge Area Food Bank is, can you explain how you work and who you serve?
Yeah, the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank is the largest hunger relief organization in the area. And we serve about 171,200 individuals every single month. That's a lot of people. And we do that by working with a network. So we start with Feeding America, and we are a partner of theirs. And then we bring in food. They help us with that. They help us with research and advocacy as well, and help us finding really good deals on food. Then we bring that food in. We acquire a bunch of food. We spend money on food sometimes. We also get some food from the USDA. So by the truckload, we're bringing in food into our warehouses. We've got one in Winchester, Verona, Charlottesville, and Lynchburg. And that helps us distribute food then to 400 partner pantries throughout the area. Really, the idea is to get that food from our warehouses to the partner pantries, the shelters, the soup kitchens, into people's hands so that they can feed their families.
We're going to talk a little bit today about what happens when the government shuts down. As we're recording, it's the 15th of October. This is going to air on the 27th. I'm hoping that everything has reopened by the time this airs, but I feel like there's a lot of misconception out there around what happens when the government shuts down and who it actually impacts, because I feel like sometimes people are thinking, oh, it's just the federal workers that are impacted, but that has a much broader impact on all of our communities.
Yeah, that's really astute, Janet, because what happens is when the federal government shuts down, when they stop paying their employees, the federal employees, and the military personnel. By the way, Virginia has over 249,000 military personnel. And in the Blue Ridge alone, in our service area, we have over 30,000 federal workers. So when those folks stop getting paid, they stop doing things. Our system of economy is set up on consumerism. And when consumers stop buying, that's when things are really felt. So when federal employees stop going out to eat, that doesn't just impact the federal employees that can't afford to go out to eat. It impacts the restaurant owner who now is selling fewer meals. It impacts the wait staff who are now not getting the tips that they were getting. And then they have less money. Then that means that they're spending less. So there's a bit of a exponential or multiplier effect for what the federal government spends. And so these sorts of effects really have an impact on people. And so when the wait staff, for instance, is making less money, then they might need to turn to the food bank or the food pantry network so that they can have food for their families. And the same with federal workers. The 30,000 federal workers who miss a paycheck might need that food, and they are going to come to the food bank network, and that means an influx of more people on top of what we're already seeing, which is the highest number of people that we've ever seen in the history of food banking.
I saw a story on the news recently with air traffic controllers. They are also caught up in this government shutdown, and they were handing out pamphlets at one of the airports to let people know that they were still working, but they were not getting paid. And they talked to one of them who said, I don't know what to do without that paycheck. I don't have the money to put gas in my car in order to come to the job that I have to do that I'm not going to get paid for. And childcare, there's not a lot of help out there for gas and childcare, but having help for feeding your family is certainly beneficial, because then that money can be redirected to those things.
That's exactly right. So when people don't have enough money, they try to ration those resources into the other things that they must have money for. And food always seems to come last. I was talking today about a guest of ours She's a stay-at-home mom. She has three children under the age of 6. She's a stay-at-home mom because she and her husband can't afford the daycare. It's cheaper for her to stay at home than it is to provide the daycare. And up in the valley, up in the northern region of the food bank, it's really expensive for a child to go to daycare. In Loudoun County, for instance, 5 years of a child going to daycare can cost $96,000. That's an incredible amount of money. In Virginia, it costs more to send a child to daycare than it does to send your child to a 4 year public college.
It isn't that crazy? That to
Yeah.
me is just mind blowing. And I know we're very fortunate here in the Shenandoah Valley because we do have Fremont Street Nursery. We have Winchester Day. We have some affordable income based options, but they are few and far between. And there's only so many of those kids that they can take. So there are still the other more expensive options that parents have to consider.
And if you're a federal employee and you're missing a paycheck, you've got to figure out how to pay for these things, which are often contracted, right? I remember when my kids were going to daycare, it really was you paid whether they went or not. So you've got to be able to make sure that you pay for that. They will get their money back. Federal employees will get back pay. Federal contractors don't get back pay. And the people who are missing paychecks because of the trickle down effect that isn't taking place, they won't get that back pay either.
Even those that are not working, it doesn't mean that they're sitting home thinking, oh, I can't wait till my back pay comes in and then I'm going to go on vacation.
Yeah.
They're going to have to pay the mortgage that they're late on. They're going to have to pay the water bill that may be dangerously close to being cut off. There are going to be late fees. There are going to be all of these other penalties that come with not paying things when they're due.
Yeah. Housing in our area has gone up over 20% in the last 3 years. 20%. Food has gone up 18% in the last 3 years. Transportation has gone up in double digits. And these are necessities in life. And when they continue to rise, that's hard enough when your paycheck doesn't keep up. When you're not getting a paycheck, it makes it just such an invisible challenge.
Let's talk about food costs for a second because I go get groceries. I get what's on my list. I have an idea of how much things cost individually, but for years I always would get what we need and would spend in the ballpark of a certain amount. So while I may not have known how much the butter cost, I knew that when I got all of these things on the list, I was between $100 with my grocery haul. I am not anywhere near that anymore, and
Yeah.
I'm not even getting everything that's on my list anymore. So, where I could get 30 or 40 things for 125, I'm getting 15 or 20 things for 100. It seems insane.
Yeah, this is how incredible $100 is. So 3 years ago, $100 was worth $100. Today, it costs $125 to buy the same set of goods that you bought 3 years ago. Now, 3 years doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but there are many people who don't see pay increase in 3 years, or you might not have seen a 25% pay increase. So you're really feeling it. And it's a funny thing with inflation, too. A lot of folks just think inflation isn't that high. It's only 3%. That's right. But after the pandemic, it went up double digits and it's up and to the right. It's not de-inflation. In other words, the inflation is not reducing prices. It's just the prices aren't going up as fast as they were. But we still achieved 25% inflation when you think about it just in a general cost of living.
And I have that conversation a lot with friends and family, and sometimes just random strangers in the grocery line. In that the price of XYZ is now this, it's not going to go back down.
Yeah.
Once that price has been raised, we hear about the tariffs and it's going to be this much more to do whatever. Those prices aren't going to drop. Now, Walmart will occasionally do their big price drop things, but in general, what we're paying now is what we're going to continue to pay, and it will go up, maybe not as quickly, but we're not ever going to see the, so I'll dime myself out here. We're not ever going to see the cans of Pringles for a buck anymore.
No, but that is one of the things with inflation. It does create a new floor. anymore, but you can imagine how our parents or grandparents felt when they were buying a loaf of bread for a nickel, and now a loaf of bread is over $3. Now, granted, minimum wage has gone up, and those are good things. And in the Commonwealth of Virginia, minimum wage is above the national minimum wage. In the Commonwealth, it's over $12. National minimum wage is over $7. The challenge is that it costs a lot to live in Virginia. In Virginia, a living wage is about $26 an hour. And so if you're making minimum wage, you're less than halfway there.
Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the food bank, food pantry side and how it's such a rescue for so many of these families that we're talking about. Can we do that in the next segment?
Absolutely.
We are on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is the communications and PR manager for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. This is part of our ongoing series, Hunger in the Valley. We're going to come back and talk about food pantries and food banks and the role that they play in our communities in just a couple of minutes.
Okay. I don't think Janet knows I'm recording this. She just stepped away to get another cup of coffee, so here's my chance. Hey everyone, it's Andy from the United Way of the Northern Shenandoah Valley. And yes, Janet, if you're hearing this, surprise, we're still celebrating the Valley Today's 2500th episode and this awesome community fundraiser you came up with. Here's the deal. Between now and the end of the year, it's Janet's goal to raise $2,500 to support the great work of the nonprofits in this community. If you give just $25 or more, you're going to be entered into a chance to be a guest on the show with Janet. If you give $250 or more, we'll make you a commercial just like this one that will air on the Valley Today podcast. So go to givebutter.com/the Valley Today right now before Janet realizes that I've hijacked her airtime. She's walking back in, cup of coffee in hand, gotta go. Remember to donate between now and the end of the year and support the great work of so many nonprofits and celebrate 2,500 episodes of the Valley Today.
Welcome back to the Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. We are on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is a communications and PR manager for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. We are knee-deep in the middle of an ongoing series that I am calling Hunger in the Valley. We're also knee-deep, Les, in the middle of a government shutdown as we're recording on the 15th of October. And so we've been talking about all of the ancillary effects for our communities that happen when our government shuts down in general. We talked about the rising cost of daycare. We talked about the rising cost of food. We talked about gas and all of the things that people still have to pay for. How do food pantries and the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, how do they come to the rescue for some of our families?
Let's start with what the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank does. So, our job really is to acquire this food, whether it's through donations from large corporations or small mom and pop stores. Places like Sheetz and Wawa and many other places will donate their food that's still perfectly good, and they'll get it to a food bank. So the food bank will then provide food to the food pantry. Some of our food pantries actually can pick up that food from a place, even like a grocery store. It's still perfectly consumable and great. They need to move it, so they move it, and then they get it out the door really fast to what we call the guests or the neighbors or their clients. People typically find a pantry by word of mouth. If they come to one of the food bank warehouses, they're never turned away without food. We have what's called an emergency food box, but then we will provide them a list of pantries nearby. We work with 400 pantries across the region, and we'll get them one that's close to either their work or their home so that they can get more food, better food, and hopefully a better selection. And then they can take that food home and provide it to their families. So the real key is making sure that people know about these organizations, especially federal employees who probably never thought that they would be in a situation where they would need a food pantry. Many people experienced that during the COVID pandemic, and everyone was laid off, and they were like, what do we do now? We need food. If you have any experience with that and you know someone who is also struggling, please let them know about the food bank. Our website has a resource called a food finder. You can go on there and put in your zip code or your home address or your work address, and it will pull up a list of food pantries near you and give you their hours of operation, their website, their contact information, the things that you need to take with you if you need to take anything with you. And so that is a really good resource for anyone who might need food, that food finder tool over at brafb.org. And then the food pantries are more like a grocery store or a customer facing entity. We have a few of those, but generally we rely on our partners to do that. They're fantastic. They meet people without judgment and they provide them as much food as they can. They often ask a couple of questions like how many people are in your family, or any of them children, or any of them seniors, but they try not to get too involved with finances or anything like that unless they have to. If it's government food, the government will often want to know what your pay status is and how much money you're making. But often that's self-declared too. You don't necessarily need to bring any proof, but the website will have more information about what you need to take with you.
Let's talk about that for a second. Andrea and I from Winchester CCAP have had a lot of conversations about this, in that there is such a stigma still
Yeah.
for people to have to go to a food pantry to get food to feed their family. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that there is no judgment, and rarely do they have to ask questions, but if they do, it's typically not because the food pantry itself wants to know. It's because where they're getting the food from requires that they gather some sort of data, which is still beneficial to all of us because it allows people like you at the food bank to say, oh, in this area, we have a group of this aged individuals in this income bracket that are suffering. Let's see if we can find a program in order to help them in other ways. There is a method to the madness.
Yeah, the research is really important, and a lot of people don't want to answer the questions. They might feel invasive, but I will tell you that the things that we glean from that, so we know that 1 in 3 of our guests is a child. We also know that 1 in 6 of our guests is a senior. So these are two populations that may not have many other recourses outside of turning to a food pantry or a food bank for food resources. Children in particular can't go get jobs, and so we feel that they should be provided for. And seniors, many of them can't work any longer, and they're living on fixed incomes. And when the price of everything goes up and their income isn't keeping up, they've got to do something. And that's where the food bank and the food pantries come in.
Medications are on the rise when you're talking about seniors, insulin, all of these other things that come with age, these illnesses that come with age, those things go up. And there are a lot of times that people will not get a prescription filled in lieu of being able to have dinner for their family.
Yeah, we call that impossible choices. And we're entering the season where it's starting to get colder and people will start to think about, boy, how do I heat my home? One of our guests was telling us that he closed off his entire home and just lived in one room. He had a heated blanket and he kept that on, and everything else was shut off so that he could afford food. Luckily, he was going to a food pantry, I think it was a mobile food pantry, which was one of ours. But those are choices that people are making. And we at the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank just simply believe that everyone should have enough to eat. And we do that without judgment. We know that a lot of folks think that there are politics involved, but I can tell you that we've got a bunch of conservative and Republicans that work for us, and a bunch of Democrats and liberals that work for us. And I think it is one of the things that makes the food bank stronger, is that we've got this great diversity of thought, and we're all trying to move things forward and make sure that people have the food that they need.
The other thing that I want to address when we're talking about food pantries too is I feel like there's a misconception about the quality of the food that you can get at a food pantry. It's not all, and this is going to sound really tacky, but it's not all Big Lots variety food. You guys are getting name brand things. You're getting fresh produce that you are then able to pass on to these pantries. So the food that you're able to get at your local food pantry is quality food.
Yeah, much of that food is by the USDA, and that is really good quality food. That is some of the highest quality food that we can get But we're buying food too. This might not be the name brand stuff that you're used to, but it is food that is of high quality. And that's one of the ways that we're able to stretch a dollar. $1 can help provide more than 3 meals. So if someone's thinking about giving a can of food or $1, my suggestion is always to give the dollar because that helps us keep programs going and feed people at the same time. And we can do more with that dollar than a person can by going to the grocery store. We're happy to take the food as well. And when you give, please think about what you would like to eat. Whatever you want to eat is something we encourage you to give.
You and I have had those conversations over the last several months is think about what your favorite meal is for your family. And the next time you go to the grocery store, just buy everything for that meal, set it aside and drop it off. But when you talk about the fact that $1 can provide 3 meals, you're not going to find a can of food at the grocery store for $1 anymore. So it's a really good deal for us donors as well as
Yeah.
the people that we're donating it to.
Yeah, it really goes a long way. And we're buying food by the truckload. We're not going to the grocery store. So that's a really important thing to think about. And you mentioned your favorite meals, and we're coming up on the food holidays, as I like to call them. And that's like Thanksgiving and Christmas when people are gathered around. And that's one of the times when the need increases at the food bank and our pantry partners because more people are thinking about that as well.
As we wrap up, one of the things that I want to remind people, and this was a lesson that I learned years ago. Again, Andrea is always so gracious and educated me on this because I was in that moment. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go get a bunch of box of cookie mixes and I'm going to donate them because every family should be able to make cookies during the holidays. It did not even slightly occur to me that that cookie mix required eggs and oil and all of the things that I just have here at the house. So I think I'm doing this great thing. And as she pointed out, I was by donating these boxes of cookie mix, but also think about the ingredients that go into it because they are often even more expensive than the box of whatever that you're buying. So getting all the ingredients is important too.
Yeah, and I think it's also very important to point out we at the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank love the community support as we're a community food bank, but also please support your local pantries. Volunteer, donate to them. They're operating on very limited incomes and often they need the volunteer help. Many of the folks who are running these things are aging and it can be hard work lifting all of this and moving stuff around. So if you're thinking about giving during the holidays, that's a great way to do it. If you can't give money, give time or give both if you can do that.
And you mentioned earlier when you have these partnerships worked out, I know that a lot of our food pantries are frequently looking for drivers, someone who can drive to Martin's to pick up all of the bread that they are donating. So even if you just can spend a couple hours driving somewhere, picking something up, and then dropping it back off at the pantry, that's a really good way to be able to give of your time.
Yeah, just ask them what they need and they will tell you. We at the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank have a slew of volunteer opportunities. I can tell you that my wife does administrative work. She's an Excel expert, so she's been voluntold to do a whole lot of stuff. She's great, and those are sorts of things that we could really use help with.
Thank you for taking the time today to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to our next one in November. It will be during Camping for Hunger Week.
Can't wait. Janet, you're the best. Thank you so much.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, a few minutes after noon, so meet me here then.